Sounds good.
Right on. Okay, well,
All
let's
right,
do it.
let's.
Well, welcome to Building Better by WCP Building Renewal. I'm Stephen Bailey, and this is a series where we sit down with leaders, operators, industry professionals to explore ideas, experiences, and lessons that help organizations perform at a higher level. And today I'm joined by Rhys Green. Rhys has built a career around leadership, culture, operations, and execution, from helping scale organizations like 1-800-GOT-JUNK, You Move Me, all the way to co-founding Trailblaze Partners and helping companies build stronger cultures and more engaged teams. So Rhys has spent years studying what separates good organizations from great ones. And so today we're going to talk about leadership, accountability, culture, execution, and what it really takes to build high-performing teams. So Rhys, welcome to Building Better.
Thanks for having me, mate. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So first question for you. So you've had a pretty unique career, just kind of taking a look at your background, right? And a unique journey across. You went from entrepreneurship, operations, consulting, leadership development, and culture, right? So when you look back across all of those experiences, what's the common thread that's connected to them?
That's such a good question, mate. I think the common thread is I've always been fascinated by the puzzle of people. And I remember even in high school reading psychology textbooks and in university in my business education, the communications and the business psychology, intercultural management, those were my favorite subjects or favorite courses, and it's kind of continued through. So, you look at I've worked in strategy, I've worked in general management, I've led call centers, I've done a whole kind of wide range of different things, but every time the difference maker is understanding how people work. You take operations, for example, and that was actually when I first started consulting, I was selling myself as an operations consultant. What would so often happen is I'd get in and I'd be like, oh, the technology is pretty good. The process is pretty good. They're measuring most of the right things, but everybody hates working here. And so they're not following the process. So it's like, let's work on that. And then maybe the other stuff will follow. And so, yeah, that's, I would say, the common thread through my entire career and
Mm.
heading into consulting as well. And even what I'm doing now with urban forest landscaping, it's a people and service first business.
Yeah, I mean, I want to linger on that, and that's interesting. So you started by thinking businesses had operational problems, but what you're saying is that over time you realized that most operational problems were actually people problems.
Yeah, I mean, in the service industry for sure. If you think
Yeah.
if you were to talk to someone in operations in manufacturing, they might have a different stance, given that there's already a ton of robots in that space. But when it comes to service businesses, it's a people problem 99 times out of 100, or maybe a people opportunity is a
hmm
nicer way to say that.
hmm
Yeah.
So can you think of an example where a company thought they had a process issue, but when you got underneath it, it was really a leadership or communication or cultural issue?
Yeah, I can. I won't share the name of the company.
That I
Uh,
wasn't fishing
yeah.
out the name at all. No, no, not at all.
And I
That's
might
not what
even
we're doing.
steer, yeah, I might even steer clear of the industry here. But it was actually who I was thinking about when it was this client that set me down the path of I think this is a people consulting business, not an operations
Big
consulting
time,
business
yeah. Yeah.
for Trailblaze, where this company was in the rental game. They did rental equipment to film and television productions, and they did all the stuff that no one else really wanted to do. Uh, you know, Ashtrays and directors' chairs and mirrors, and there's some really big players in that space, but these guys had carved out a little
hmm
niche for themselves. And uh, I remember getting in, and they handed me their operations manual, and it was extensive, and all of their processes were well documented, and their warehouse was super well organized. Um, I took a look at their books, and they were bleeding money. Their revenue was
hmm
great, but they were bleeding money. And yeah, the deeper I dug, the clearer it became that it was stability of leadership. It was the same leader, but very a lot of shiny objects for that leader,
Mm,
and it was like a people engagement. And so the people that were there were being pushed really hard. They were working a lot of hours, a lot of overtime, often unnecessarily because of that chopping and changing in decision
hmm
making and the constant new stuff and constant new products and all that sort of thing. And so, yeah, the game in that one was to get some focus and to work with the leader to find his focus and then help that to trickle down into the rest of the team. And so it was about establishing core values and bringing the team in so that more regularly for meetings, so they understood where things were
hmm
going, and saving decisions to large decisions to like quarterly or annual meetings, so that there was a lot less chopping and changing in direction. So yeah, that's one of many examples, I would say.
And I've certainly seen that as well. Um, and given your experiences, why do you think so many leaders instinctively look for operational fixes before they look at the people side of the equation?
Well, I mean, there's this it's quite prevalent, but this belief that people don't fail, systems do, which to an extent I believe, but kind of you need both, right? Like people can fail even with good systems. If they feel unsupported or uncared for, their basic needs are not met. I think that systems are controllable. There's more satisfaction. I often think about people as like it's like a puzzle, right? Except the pieces in the puzzle are changing shape as you're trying to do the puzzle.
Yeah.
And but that's not the case with operations. So I think operations you can kind of get your head around a little bit more. Um, and yeah, it's a little more predictable, a little easier to work on, feels more numbers and data driven. I guess maybe it is more numbers and data driven. And so it typically gets the attention.
Mm, yeah. Well, and lingering on that for a sec before we move on, because one thing I find interesting is that, you've obviously now spent years studying leadership, engagement, culture, performance. So when you look across all the organizations you've worked with, what do the best leaders consistently do differently?
Mm, that's a really hard question to answer.
Mm,
Yeah, I guess there's some core uh, behaviors and skills that most leaders are able to display and can execute on. It's basic things like giving feedback that actually is actually going to get heard, uh, and not shying away from that. You'd be surprised how many leaders ignore poor performance or bad behavior just because
mm,
they're scared to have the conversation, or they've tried and it was ineffective, or those kinds of things. So yeah, so it feels like a real basic, I think, because it is once you get it, but there's a ton of leaders out there that don't do it particularly well. um I think they give their team a clear vision and a place to go and a place to work towards together. It's not necessarily visionary leadership as you would read about it in a textbook, but it's certainly a brighter picture of the future gets painted that the team can buy into and
hmm
is excited to follow. It doesn't have to be for the organization. It could just be for the team. Supervisors can have a vision for how they want their small part of the business to contribute to the overall whole of the business in 4 or 5
hmm
years.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think there's those things are fairly consistent, and this is a bit of a cop out answer to this question, mate. But uh, I think that they know themselves really well. They
Mm,
know what they're good at. They know what they aren't good at, and they see themselves as a part of the puzzle, and
hmm
they try to build around that.
mm. Yeah, I mean, the self-awareness piece, it doesn't come easy to a lot of people. But I mean, yeah, going back to what you said, I think it's funny because, those tough conversations are often the ones people avoid the longest, yet they're usually the conversations that create the most progress, right? So I've heard it said that avoiding a difficult conversation doesn't eliminate the problem, right? It just delays it and it usually makes it bigger. So And I mean, we
Yeah.
see that like in you see that in the service industry. We see it in the construction project manage or property management. We see it all the time. The issues that become major problems are rarely surprises, right? Usually someone knew there was an issue weeks or months earlier, but no one wanted to have that uncomfortable conversation. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
yeah,
and look, leadership is it's a vocation, right? It's a skill or a technical pursuit like any other that can be developed. I didn't get interested in leadership because I was good at it. I got interested in leadership because I was shit at it. And so,
Mm,
I that was when I started to kind of study and learn about it and learn some of these skills. So it is something that can be learned and fit around you and who you are. You don't have to change who you are. You just kind of add on to it.
yeah.
Um, you mentioned the self-awareness piece. There's a self-awareness researcher, Tasha Eurich, and you might want to fact check this later. Just I might butcher some of the numbers in this, but she did a study on self-awareness in the workplace and asked a bunch of people, how self-aware are you? And a huge percentage of the population said that they were self-aware. And then through a series of interviews and surveys, she established that the vast majority of those people who thought they were self-aware were actually not self-aware. They didn't
Yeah.
actually know how they were showing up. And so, coming back to that giving feedback, like giving good feedback, asking for feedback, integrating it and using it to develop your self-awareness, I think that's like a core trait of a strong leader.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So I want to pivot because
Let's go.
one thing that stood out to me when looking through your background was your time at 1-800 Got Junk. So during your tenure, the business experienced some incredible growth.
Mm.
So, and I think if I'm not mistaken, it grew massively. It went from roughly like 80 million toward like 200 million. So a lot of organizations focus on scaling revenue, but scaling people, culture, and systems at the same time is a completely different challenge. So when growth starts happening quickly, what tends to break first inside an organization?
Oh, great question. Man, I learned a ton during my time at 1-800 Got Junk and O2E Brands. I was there for like 10 years. I think it was like 2 weeks under 10 years, in a huge variety of roles. Uh, what breaks first depends on what you're weakest at, I would say.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. You know, at Junk, uh, yeah, I'm trying to think of what would have broken first. I don't know. I don't know that I have a definitive answer to that. I think that at Junk, it was different to what I saw in other organizations. And at the size of business that 1-800 Got Junk was, even when I joined at that, I think it was like 87 or maybe low 90s. I don't remember the exact number in revenue when I first joined. And I joined as a call center agent, by the way. I didn't join in
Mm,
any kind of senior role. Um, yeah, the things I think that were breaking were different depending on the part of the organization you're in as
hmm
well. So, and you'd have even between franchisees, different stuff breaking in different businesses. Like the Toronto
hmm
business was the biggest and the fastest growing in that in that network at that time, and so they were often the first to break the system.
mm,
Um, and yeah, typically the warning sign though I think is in quality, like quality of
mm,
delivery. One of my early managers there and a mentor and still say a friend, although I don't talk to him as much as I would like, was the franchisee in Toronto, and he was the first 1-800 Got Junk franchisee. And I know to this day he's still involved in his business. They've got 27 odd locations within that system. I don't remember exactly how much revenue they're running through their business, but it's got to be a lot by now. And like he goes deep on two things. He goes deep on P&L and he goes really deep on customer complaints. And his questions are never like, what went wrong? It's, hey, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Like let's get into the analysis. Let's have a look at what happened. Let's look at the system. Let's look at the process. Who was involved? Let's ask some questions and what do we need to change to make sure this doesn't happen again? And, he's been in the business probably getting close to 30 years now, I would say. And
mm.
and those are still the types of questions he's asking every day.
Yeah. You know, as it's so funny because as you were talking, we're talking about what's the first thing that break. You just triggered something big time because here I am. I'm thinking like we've already talked about communication. That can be one major break. Leadership, if you have poor leadership, that's a major break. If culture isn't there, that's also something that's going to turn things around quickly, as you mentioned before. I'm paraphrasing, but as you
Yeah.
dug into companies, you've realized everything's going well except everyone hates working here. So obviously it's a rotten culture. And then you also said systems. Like earlier you mentioned that people don't fail, systems do. But then something you just said clicked because you said early signs are quality of work. And the thing that really resonates with me at WCP, we can have all the systems, process, and plans in the world, but at the end of the day, our success is largely a reflection of the people executing the work in the field, right? And I mean, we're fortunate to have some incredibly talented guys out in the field. Site supervisors, tradespeople, project managers. They're the ones showing up every day, solving problems, communicating with clients, just delivering those quality outcomes. And I think that's probably a good example of what you're talking about, right? Like when organizations start growing, one of the first indicators is often the quality of work itself. So if culture, communication, systems start slipping, you usually see it show up there first. So a question for you, like have you found that quality tends to be the canary in the coal mine? Like the first signal that something deeper might be happening inside an organization?
Yeah, I would say it's one in service businesses, it's one of the canaries. Um, yeah. Yeah, an increase in complaints or longer lead times, those types of things are often an indicator that something is amiss. The thing is, these are operational numbers, right? And I think again, you asked that question of like why does ops get the focus? I think because ops is often the place that stuff is most obviously beginning to break down first.
Hmm.
And and so you go, well, it's an ops. These are ops numbers. It's an ops problem. Let's go solve this ops problem. But it more often than not is ops is not the tail, but it's the outcome of a
Right.
whole bunch of other processes. And so you typically need to go a bit deeper than that, especially in smaller businesses like the ones you and I are working in. Stephen, I know you guys are a bit bigger than us, but like our landscaping business, operations is the majority of our business. We have sales and
Hmm.
marketing activities that both you and I like to go work on, but
Hmm. Hmm.
operations makes up the vast majority of our activities, and so, but it is driven by things like culture and stability of leadership and that sort of thing.
Hmm. Well, and what's interesting is everything we've talked about so far. So quality, communication, leadership, accountability, customer experience, like, ultimately that comes back to people, right? And
Yeah.
honestly, that seems to be exactly what led you to co-found Trailblaze Partners, right? Because at some point after years of operating and scaling business, you decided to focus specifically on culture, leadership, and engagement. So what was the catalyst for that?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, at the time, I had myself convinced it was the market, and that's
Yeah.
what I was seeing. In retrospect, I think it's just those are often the problems I like to work on as well, right? So, I have a bit of a bias towards, like I said, that puzzle of people, and so yeah, that's kind of where I saw most problems were leading. Yeah, I actually started the consulting business with the idea. I've been with Junk for 10 years. It was my first like real career job. And I kind of started the business with the idea that I'd go see some industries and then figure out what my like real startup was going to be. And I ended up running the consulting business a lot longer than than I had expected to. It kind of turned into a real business, and we had Jerry Grattan come and join as my partner, and yeah, it turned into something a bit more than I had ever intended it to be. But I think that's because I had kind of looked at it as a learning endeavor at the start,
Mm-hmm.
and this is to help me kind of figure out where I'm going to go and also help some other businesses along the way. Um, those were the problems that I felt I would maybe be most likely needing to solve when it came to time to run my like real business,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've spent both sides. You've spent time on both sides of the equation, right? You've worked inside organizations, you've owned businesses yourself. So, what having that sort of unique perspective, like what's something you believed about business before you became an owner that turned out to be completely wrong?
Oh man, I love this question. Been asked this question a bunch of times. I I thought business was about the numbers and the P&L and analytical and all that kind of stuff that it kind of feels like when you're doing a business education or
Hmm. Hmm.
reading any business text or anything. No, man, business is a fucking emotional roller coaster. And your ability as a like especially in a small business, but I think even as a leader in a large organization, this is true. Your ability to deal with those emotions, get off the roller coaster. Um, I'm not saying push them down, don't feel them, any of that kind of stuff, because I don't think that's productive as well. It's like it's dealing with your own emotions and it's dealing with the emotions of other people in order to work through them and drive performance together or use them to push you and drive performance forward. But I'd say
Yeah.
like yeah, business is so much more feeling than I had ever thought it would be.
Oh, how you handle adversity is the art of life, right? And that goes whether it's
Yeah.
with personal or professional. So,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think Stoicism has a lot of good things to say about leadership in business.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's funny because I think a lot of people get into business believing it's about the strategy, the numbers, the analytics, the execution, right? And it's not to say that those things don't matter, but the longer that I've been doing this, the more I've realized how you can handle adversity, like I said, is really the art of life. So you're going to get punched in
Yeah.
the face, projects are going to go sideways, clients are going to be upset, people leave, markets change, right? Um,
Yeah.
and again, the challenge isn't avoiding these moments, it's how you respond to them, right? It's about controlling what you can control. If you can control 80%, that's a good margin to be able to keep in control. The rest of the 20, that's outside of your control, but focus on what you can, right? So, and I mean back to, and I want to linger again because you've got that perspective from leadership, but have you found that the best leaders aren't necessarily the ones who experience less adversity, but the ones who recover from it more effectively?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Mm,
recovering from adversity and like I would talk about mental fitness in this context.
yeah.
Dr. Karen McNeil is one of my favorite people on this topic. But there's some great books out there too, The Inner Game of Tennis and a few other bits and pieces. But you think about like there's kind of three pieces to your mental state at work. There's mental health, which is, can
Mm,
I get out of bed in the morning and do the basics? You have kind of resilience, which layers on top of that mental health. It's that buffer. And then you have mental fitness, which is, can I show up at my best on demand? And I think the leaders, the business owners, frontline employees, the ones that are your highest performers, typically are capable of controlling or have some level of influence over their ability to show up at their best on demand.
that's right. Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people listening to this are, I would imagine, are going to be property managers, building owners, even contractors, and business leaders as well. But based on that, like if there was one thing that they could do tomorrow that would improve the performance of their team, what would it be?
You mean aside from hiring urban forest landscaping to take care of their properties?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Aside from hiring WCP Building Renewal and Urban Forest
Yeah.
Landscaping to handle all their building restoration needs and their landscaping needs, yes.
Yeah,
What else could they be
exactly.
doing?
Yeah. Aside from those two really obvious solves to most of their problems, I would say one thing in particular that they could do to improve the performance of their team, talk talk more regularly. So, if you're pulsing daily, you're going to have better results than if you're pulsing weekly. And if you're pulsing
Mm,
monthly, you're going to have better results if you're pulsing weekly versus monthly. So, it's just like have those check-ins. At 1-800 Got Junk, we did a daily huddle. I remember the first time I walked in and everybody was clapping for every single win. And I'm like,
Mm.
what the fuck is this an episode of Oprah? This is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I mean, Australians are a bit more reserved about that kind of thing than Canadians. Eventually I got behind it. But the value in a huddle, in a daily huddle, is that you have this open forum to talk about stuff. Things get surfaced more quickly. You have the walk to the huddle so relationships get maintained. There's a dissemination of results and a refocusing that happens every day when you're doing that daily huddle. And I know 1-800 Got Junk didn't invent that. It's a Rockefeller habits, scaling up, Vern Harnish kind of thing. I know EOS talks about that type of stuff as
Yeah.
well. So, and I would say in leadership and managing organizations, if someone tells you they've got a new idea, they're lying to you. None of this is a new idea. But uh, yeah, I would say that's the number one thing. Pulse more regularly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you say that. And it's funny because people are always looking for the new system, new framework, new piece of technology, right? But what you're describing is actually pretty simple. It's just people talking to each other more frequently but above that more intentionally as well. Um,
Yeah.
do
It's
you
so
think,
easy to lose. Sorry, I was gonna say it's so easy to lose track of the fact that humans are devices developed millions of years ago, and we haven't really changed that much.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like, we're trying to find all of these new ways of working and solve these problems. But like we really there aren't that many new ideas. Like, you're like operant conditioning repackaged as continuous improvement, and you've got like there's a bunch of stuff that
Mm,
when you get deeper into it, you just see it's like packaged and repackaged and data added, and now it looks scientific. There's ideas from ancient philosophers that show up in, leadership development research papers, and you're like, oh, this is a couple thousand years old. It looks new now because there's data, but yeah, we're old. People are old, and we talk. Let's just talk to each other and give feedback and kind of trust the feelings.
yeah. Um, well, and you mentioned EOS. We operate on EOS as well, and it offers an amazing framework that forces and prompts you to communicate effectively, intentionally, and often.
Yeah,
And because there will be days on end where I'm not necessarily interacting with someone else in the company because, we're busy doing whatever it is that we may be doing. But we'll at the very least always get together at least once a week, if not more, to just talk about it and how can I be supporting you? Hey, you need to be supporting me more in this way. And so shout out to EOS because we're very thankful that we have that framework to offer us the flexibility and the autonomy to get busy and allow ourselves to get busy while still all pushing and moving towards the same common goal, right? So.
yeah. You know what I love about EOS and scaling up? I think neither of their frameworks are 100%. I think perfect is different for every single organization. What I love about both of those is it gives us as leaders certainty.
Hmm.
And I remember me talking about that story of like chopping and changing direction and that
Hmm.
kind of thing with that client. I find when there's organizations that are operating under a framework like EOS or scaling up or maybe their own kind of version of one of those things, there's this level of commitment to this is how we operate, and you're not chopping and changing it. So like for 3 months we do huddles and then we don't do huddles anymore, and now we're doing cuddles and we change the name and it looks different, and like there's just this like commitment and certainty that I think gives a really good structural base that I don't really see happen in organizations that aren't working in
Hmm.
some type of framework like that.
Hmm. Hmm. I agree. I agree. And I mean, I've been at organizations before where, like the common goal was not transparent. And
Mm,
so that means that your direction is lost in a way, right? Because you keep coming back to this question of like, well, why? Yeah, we're trying to scale. Why? Like what are we trying to do here? Are we scaling for the purpose of just trying to make more revenue and grow and
mm,
build the team bigger? And is that really something an employee can buy into? Not really. Like let's actually like drill in and the scaling and the revenue and bringing more people on board is the foundation to build us up into the direction of that why. And I think that a lot of organizations don't have that. And whatever that might be. And as you said, it's going to be different across the board, but figure whatever that thing is out because that's what people are ultimately going to buy into. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, I think like why and big picture vision is all tied back to purpose. And purpose had a real moment a couple of years ago where every organization was trying to find their purpose, and a lot of them were trying to relate it to, something somewhat altruistic and unrelated to money. I don't I don't know. I don't know that you necessarily need a big complicated why. Sometimes the why can just be because it's fun to build shit together. You know what I mean?
100%,
It's like
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
it's way more fun to grow than it is to be stagnant.
Well, I mean,
And that's okay.
I'll give you two
Yeah.
examples. In a previous role many years ago, I had a great relationship with a client. I was working at a tech company. Throughout the course of our relationship, I found out that, ultimately what he was trying to do, he was trying to send his son to an Ivy League school, and he needed to be able to rework his systems and to be able to afford that. That was his driving force to everything he did. And I was happy he shared that with me. And I didn't use it against him. I got on the same team as him, right? And it was, okay, let's do that. Let's work together to make sure that your son can go to an Ivy League school. And I think he did. I think he went to Yale years later, and this was after I had left. And I remember keeping in touch with him and mentioning that to him. I was like, "Hey, you did it, and like, good for you." And that was his why. And then I had another, I had another client more recently. I want to get a boat, and I was like, "Perfect,
Let's
let's get
do
on
it.
board. Let's get on the same team. Let's get you a friggin' boat, man." So
Yeah.
anyway,
It
um,
is funny, isn't it? We're so reluctant to share our wants and our dreams and our actual why
yeah,
for whatever reason, but often often people will buy in pretty quickly. And I think again, this is something I think Junk did really, 1-800 Got Junk did really well. And full credit to Brian for the way that he executed this, is he would do a painted picture every 4 years, which was his
mm,
vision statement of what the business is going to look like in 4 years' time. But he would engage his leadership team, and as a team member there, you could see your part in that. You could see,
hmm
okay, if we get to 200 million, then my department will be at X size, and I can see the opportunity there, and that kind of lines up, and there'll be more money in
mm,
it for me, and like that what's in it for me, I think needs to be answered for everybody in an organization. We always at Travelers Partners, we always talked about how purpose is personal, where a company purpose is one thing and it's fine, but people need to be able to see their own personal purpose and how it lines up with the company purpose in order
mm,
for it to be something that's motivational and impactful.
mm, mm. Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself, Rhys. So I know we've now gone over the promised 30-minute structure that I said to you. So I do appreciate you hanging in there with me. But as we start to wrap up, we've covered a lot in a short period of time. We've covered leadership, we've covered culture, we've covered growth. Communication was a big piece, entrepreneurship, right? Team performance. If and this is a hard question because I don't even think I could answer this, but if you had to boil it all down into one principle consistently led to better teams and better outcomes throughout your career, what would that be?
Mm.
I'm also thinking of an answer because I don't know that I can answer that either.
That's a tough
So
question.
it's a tough question, man.
Yeah, I'm going to rely on editing here as I think it through. I think I'm not, I mean, if you ask me about this again tomorrow, I'm not sure my answer would be the same because it's a tough one
Mm,
and I haven't thought about it before. But in this moment, I would say keep sight of the customer is
mm,
the number one principle. Whether you're a sysadmin in in a large IT team in a $1 billion company, or a small business with 4 people who's talking to customers every day. I think if you think about the customer in your decision making, and you think about the customer in how you lead and where you focus your efforts, uh, a lot of other stuff can go wrong and you're still probably going to be okay.
Mm, that's a great place to leave it. So, before we officially wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with the people listening, whether they're business owners, leaders, property managers, or just simply trying to build stronger teams?
Uh, I would think, yeah, I'd say it's hard. It's all hard. Leading teams is hard. Building businesses is
Mm,
hard. That's okay. And having bought Urban Forests, what's 9 months ago now, and having gone on this cycle a couple times, there's just this inevitable gap between knowing and doing that
mm,
makes it even harder. And so I think, like, just kind of being a bit patient with yourself. Every day you're trying to do the best you can, and that's okay. Um, but if it was easy, everybody would do it.
hmm Man, I do say that quite a lot. So,
Yeah, me
before I
too.
let you go, and for anyone listening who's interested in learning more about what you're building, what's keeping you excited right now? What are you focused on, and where can people learn more?
I'm focused on urban forest landscaping. That's what's keeping me excited. I have a great team. Patrick is our GM. He's a Red Seal horticulturalist. Chris is our ops manager. We've got some really good supervisors, some great sites, and we're growing really quickly. And so that's where, like, 100% of my focus is right now. And I'm excited about what this business could look like in 4 years and how many
Mm.
great sites we could be supporting by then.
Likewise, I'm excited to see where Urban Forest goes. They've got a great leader at the helm. So, Rhys, great conversation. One thing that really stood out to me while we started talking about business performance, we kept coming back to people, right? So whether that's scaling a company, if it's building a culture, navigating adversity, um, creating high performing teams, right? Like the common thread seemed to be how people communicate, connect, and how they can work together. So thank you for sharing your perspective and your experience. Thank you to everyone tuning in to Building Better by WCP Building Renewal. If you'd like to connect with Rhys, or just learn more about urban forest landscaping or anything else he's got going on, we'll make sure that we include links alongside this episode. But thanks again for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Building Better. Rhys, thanks so much.
Thanks, David.